excited to have Cory Yates today from Reel Analytics, one of the hardest workers in business game, I know at least. So, Cory, introduce yourself.
Hi, Reel. Thanks for having me on. I'm Cory Yates, serving as co-founder and CEO of Reel Analytics. We are an AI-powered sports technology company that analyzes video to measure athleticism, and the data we extract to measure athleticism is used by both athletes and American football programs to evaluate players objectively. So we help programs evaluate players objectively, and we help athletes unlock opportunities so that they can achieve their dreams of playing at a higher level.
Interesting, right. We'll get to this, but interesting at the beginning, how have you started? Where did you see the idea, how it came to your mind?
Well, I lived the pain points of the recruiting process. I was coming out of high school overlooked by American football coaches, and that's primarily because I was undersized. But I knew that I could play at the collegiate level. And so I only had one scholarship offer, and that scholarship offer, unfortunately for me, was rescinded. In other words, it was taken away. The program decided that I wasn't a good fit for them, and so I was left to have to walk on and earn a scholarship at a different university, and I ended up doing so. I ended up walking on at Texas A&M in Commerce, earned a scholarship after my first year there. It was one of the most memorable days of my life, one of my most proudest accomplishments. And the rest is kind of history. I went on to play there all 4 years. I was a multi-year starter there, and then ended up even getting invited to a regional NFL combine. And so that was my story. And then fast forward 30 years later, my son, who was also under-recruited, did not have any star rankings. He received his first scholarship offer from one of his dream schools, SMU in Dallas, Texas. And unfortunately for him and us, that offer too was rescinded. They removed his scholarship once they moved and changed coaching staffs, which was unfortunate for him at the time. Now, fortunately, he overcame my DNA. He's much bigger, much taller, and more athletic than I am. And so he did end up earning a scholarship at another university. He's currently playing at Colorado University as a defensive back, playing for who most consider the best cornerback in NFL history, Coach Prime, Coach Deion Sanders, and he plays defensive back there. Last year, he ended up playing 11 out of 13 games, which goes to show that he had the ability to play at the next level, to the extent that coaches and programs had verified athletic data from game film on his ability to play, and that's what we were able to provide Colorado and their program, which is why he had that opportunity there.
Okay, so can we say that your company helped your son as well as the main, the main client of your company is your son?
Absolutely. And so we're incredibly thankful that we were able to work with Coach Prime and his staff at Jackson State. When he took over that program in 2021, we helped them build a championship roster. He hired our services to be able to identify and evaluate talent objectively through our technology, but more importantly, our data that we generate from the technology. And so we evaluated over 2,000 prospects, including some transfer portal prospects, and they were able to go on. They won 2 conference championships. They had 2 national championship games in the level that they play at. And then once he was promoted, Coach Prime was promoted from Jackson State University to Colorado. He brought our services with him, and they had a need at defensive with the in-game athleticism score for not only my son, but other players as well. And again, fortunately for him, fortunately for us, it worked out well because they saw that Ivan, my son, had the ability to play at his level.
Really interesting. So your main customers right now are NCAA football, right?
Well, today we service a handful of major college football programs, but for us, that's not the market. The market for us are athletes. If you think about why we led with the college football programs, we led there because we wanted to work side by side with those programs. We've done so over the past 5 years to truly understand the traits, the athletic traits that college coaches are looking for when they're evaluating game tape. And so working side by side with them, not only did we understand those traits, we're able to quantify those traits through game film. And we have a proprietary score. It's called the in-game athleticism score, or IGA score, that we utilize to evaluate players objectively and project them to the next level, whether it's high school to college or even college to the NFL. And so that is a direct result of really two things, Khalil. One, working side by side with top football programs over the past 5 years. And then secondly, my co-founder and I have over 60 years of experience having gone through the recruiting process as a player, as a former coach, and then you heard my story as well, also as a parent. So we truly understand this space and the pain points and some of the biases and blind spots that exist, to the extent that you do not have data that we can provide to help eliminate those blind spots.
Interesting. Tell us about how this AGA, right, score, or how
the IGA score is position specific. And what we do is we take all of that tribal knowledge that I talked about earlier from coaches to measure the athleticism from game film, again, position by position. So for example, we know that players or coaches are actually looking for defensive backs who have what they call oily hips, right? Which is, an industry term. But what that means for someone who's not close to the space, it means that they're able to flip their hips and transition smoothly and quickly. In other words, change direction quickly. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, smooth hips.
And so we're able to measure that. That's just one trait that we measure from tape, along with several others. But we're measuring things like max speed, acceleration, change of direction that I just talked about. For defensive backs, we're measuring how many yards of separation that they're allowing when they're in coverage and being targeted. And then we also measure their closing speed. How quickly are they closing the yards of separation to make a play on the ball? These are all traits that coaches look for when they're evaluating players on tape. Prior to Reel Analytics, right, no one was able to quantify those things. And so we're quantifying those traits, and all of those traits that I just talked about, they roll up into the in-game athleticism score. Each metric is weighted, right, based on our proprietary algorithms. And then we then calibrate those scores based on the level of play that we project the player. And so we've got over 20,000 players in our database that we've studied, both at the professional level, collegiate level, going all the way back to the late 1970s. And we're incredibly thankful for our development team, who was able to really bring this to life, to really take game film and extract data for us to be able to help these programs today, and then going forward, help athletes unlock opportunities for them to pursue their dreams, so that they don't have to experience the pain that both I felt and my son felt going through the recruiting process.
Well, really, really interesting, to be honest. And you mentioned, how many metrics included in AGA score? 5?
Well, it depends on the position. So we have an IGA score for wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers, outside linebackers, edge rushers. And so it depends on, we have anywhere from 5 metrics all the way up to 8 metrics, depending on the position. And those metrics, again, have been not only vetted qualitatively by college coaches, but also quantitatively through regression models that we've built to determine what metrics actually matter.
Okay, so regression models, that means you watch a lot of, you train your AI with a lot of data from historical games, and then it gave you the answer, the metrics that could be really useful.
Absolutely. So we took a two-prong approach, right? So we interviewed, before we wrote a single line of code, we interviewed over 150 college coaches and player personnel executives. And they gave us feedback on some of those traits, athletic traits that they look for, right? Then over the past 5 years, we pressure test that with our regression model. And we actually went back to our beta partners in some cases and said, look, we know you told us that these traits matter, but when we actually run a regression model and we look at historical data, these are the traits that actually matter, and here's how much they matter, right? And so it was a combination of those two things that powers this in-game athleticism score. And we're incredibly proud of the fact that we're able to project players to the next level with a high degree of accuracy. So our hit rate in terms of projecting players to the next level is about 75%, which is almost 3 times the industry average.
So you're able to to predict the success of the player for around like 75% of accuracy.
We're able to predict the level that they will play at with a 75% accuracy.
Okay.
And so we're projecting what level they're going to play at that level. In terms of success varies depending on the program and depending on the level. So we don't necessarily say, hey, look, we can project the success rate at 75%. We're projecting that this athlete can play there's various college levels, and obviously you have the professional level. Our projection accuracy is based on how we project the player in terms of level of play.
And can we say, like, let's say maybe in future or now, can you project an NFL player from a high school?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
So in fact, what we're able to do, and I'll touch on some of the numbers, our projection, so almost 60% of athletes who play at a sub-Power 4 level in college football end up making an NFL roster, 58% to be exact.
Really?
And so what that means is that we're able to project small school prospects. We're able to identify the traits that make an NFL caliber player, even if they don't go to a major college football program. That's pretty incredible. And then if you fast forward, 5%, roughly a quarter of the athletes in our database that have an IGA score of 90 plus, those players go on to make at least one All-Pro or Pro Bowl award when they get to the NFL. And so it's pretty incredible. And those numbers that I mentioned are based on high school film. And so if you think about it, it makes common sense. There aren't any NFL players who were bad high school football players. Mm-hmm. There just aren't. You don't go from being a poor high school football player to being an NFL caliber athlete over the course of your athletic career. So we identify talent very early in the pipeline. That talent starts to develop and that talent starts to show runway at the high school level as early as their freshman year. And so we're tracking the progression of these athletes starting their high school year. And again, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. But you can absolutely project which players are showing and have the athletic traits as early as high school.
Okay, now I see why you call the Reel Analytics, all right? Okay, this is awesome. But that sounds like, that feels like I could understand when people could project it, but how were you able to do it by technology? How does it work inside?
Yeah, so we have a couple of algorithms that are important to what we do. The first of which is an algorithm that recognizes the football field. And so we're recognizing key points on the football field, whether it's the sidelines, whether it's the yard lines, the hash marks, touchdowns, the goalpost. And so that's one component to how we're able to extract data from the video. The second component, key component, is our algorithm that tracks the player, that identifies the player and then also tracks the player. And so for us, we have various techniques that we use to be able to identify the player on the field, whether it's his helmet, whether it's his shoulder pads, the numbers that he's using. And then with that information, we're able to identify the exact location of that player on the football field when you combine the two algos. And then from there, we have smoothing techniques that are actually tracking both time and distance. And that's how we're able to derive a baseline of some of the metrics that we're able to measure, such as speed, acceleration, change of direction, and those position-specific metrics that I mentioned earlier. So those are the key components, the key core components to our tech. Doesn't require any wearable devices. Everything we're doing is through video. And so it allows us to be cost effective. It allows us to scale from the NFL, the professional level, all the way down to the youth level, because again, it's cost effective. It doesn't require wearable devices. And oh, by the way, Khalil, we're able to do this with a high degree of accuracy. So we're plus or minus 2% relative to what's being utilized at the professional level. At the
Okay.
professional level, Next Gen Stats or Zebra Technologies, which powers Next Gen Stats, they're using RFID technology. So you've got sensors that are outfitted throughout the stadium. You also have sensors that are about quarter size in the shoulder pads, helmet, and then even smaller chips in the ball to measure some of the metrics that I mentioned
Hmm.
earlier that we do, again, without wearable devices.
So yeah, only thing you need is just a video, and you're 2% accurate, like they are, right, and the highest level.
Absolutely. Yeah, plus or minus 2%.
Interesting. And since you mentioned it's really scalable, right? How many games were you able, or are you able to proceed, let's say, in a week, in a season, in a month?
Yeah, so we actually measure when it comes to high school athletes, let me be
Mm-hmm.
clear. When it comes to high school athletes, what they do today in order to get noticed by college coaches is they put together about on average, a 5-minute highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
And that highlight reel has their best plays on there. On average, it's about 40 plays. That's what we use to grade players. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you might say, well, why do you use their best plays? We use their best plays because when we talked and worked side by side with coaches, they told us two things. One, they told us we can tell by looking at tape within 10 plays if whether or not an athlete can play at our level. That's point one.
Mm-hmm.
So 40 plays is more than enough in terms of sample size to help these college programs identify those players that they want to go after. Secondly, we're looking at, when we talked about the IGA score earlier, since we're grading their best plays, that's their ceiling. So if their ceiling isn't good enough for a particular level, then we're saving coaches time and money not recruiting that athlete. And so that allows us to be efficient and effective because when you think about the number of high school highlight videos in the marketplace today, it's over 7 million. 7 million minutes worth of high school highlight tape. And that's a conservative number. That's just based on
Mm-hmm.
highlight reel. So you've got to do the multiplier on that when you're talking about full games. And there's no way that a college football program can review and analyze with a high degree of accuracy that amount of tape. So what
Mm-hmm.
we're helping these programs do is quickly filter down to the players that matter based on their highlight reel. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we're able to scale what we do at the high school level. It's based on the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm. So, if I understood correctly, the players are sending the highlights to the programs, to colleges, and then that's where you come in, you receive it, and then analyze it, give the score to coaches. Is it
You
correct?
got it. You got it. You got it, Khalil. So the coaches, there's two ways. The coaches will provide us with a list of players. It's their
Mm-hmm.
prospect sheet or their board. And that list of players can be anywhere from hundreds of players to thousands of players. And they'll provide us with the list of players along with their highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in some cases, college programs will actually create their own tape, their own set of plays that they want us to analyze and grade. But for the most part, they're providing us with the athlete and their corresponding highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
The other way is for athletes to submit their highlight reel to us through our website today.
Mm-hmm.
So through those two ways, we're able to evaluate players. And then I guess the third way is for us to actually proactively go out and fetch the highlight reels that are available through the internet of players that we already know that college coaches are going to want to grade on. So
Mm-hmm.
there's about 250 players each year that we proactively go out, we'll grade their highlight reel and generate an IGA score for those 250 players because these are the 250 players that are considered the top players in the industry in the space for that given year. So we'll proactively go out, grade those players,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives us a baseline of players to work with as college coaches are giving us names of players that they want us to verify their speed and athleticism.
Really interesting. Right. So you're doing like a scouting, and my question to you is that will AI replace scouts, or will they be kind of addition to the scout and help them, to work smarter?
AI is just going to augment the existing process today. We very much believe that when you're evaluating talent, it's both an art and a science, and you have to balance the two.
Mm-hmm.
We don't claim to have the silver bullet that's going to solve the discovery problem, but we do very much believe that you have to augment and supplement your recruiting and evaluation process with objective data,
Mm-hmm.
and not just objective data, because all data is not created equally. One of the things that differentiates us from other sports analytics companies is that we're measuring what matters. We're measuring in-game athleticism, not athleticism displayed in a lab environment. When I say a lab environment, in a camp or a combine,
Mm-hmm.
where players are running the 40-yard dash, they're jumping and doing the vertical jump, they're doing a shut. Those are all old school methods of evaluating
Mm-hmm.
talent, because your athletes are doing that in a t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah.
They're not doing that in the context of a game. And so what we're able to do is we're able to help answer critical questions for coaches about a player's athletic ability in the context of a game. And so we're seeing a seismic shift in the industry where coaches are leaning on our data because, again, it's based on game film.
Mm-hmm.
And film is king or queen, depending on who you're talking to. And we're not going to shy away from that. We're always going to we're always going to lean into the film, and we're always going to provide data from the film to help these coaches evaluate talent objectively and accurately.
Really interesting, right? So, and how does name, image, and likeness affected your business? And do you see a potential of, since the college athletes could be paid right now, do you see the potential of coaches using and organization using your score to propose the salaries and etc. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so name, image, and likeness, or NIL,
Yeah.
has absolutely been a tailwind for us. Obviously, when you think about from an athlete perspective, they're looking for ways to improve the valuation of their personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And we can help them do that through the IGA score. Why? Because national brands, advertisers, they want to be associated with the next superstar,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want to be associated with that player that's going to draw eyeballs to their brand if they're associated with it. And we're able to do that. One of the byproducts of our technology is our ability to produce short form video content. And that short form video content actually shows a player and how fast they run on a given play. And so we've been able to demonstrate value by unlocking NIL opportunities for both football programs and athletes by associating or giving that digital asset to marketing programs who can go out and solicit sponsorships. And so, for example, we work with University of Alabama in Birmingham, and we help their program and their NIL collective by raising a 5-figure deal with their local Porsche dealership there in Birmingham, Alabama. So that's just one example. And then in terms of, that's just on the athlete side. So that short form video content, the IGA score can help improve and the personal brand for those athletes. And then on the football side, on the football program side, that IGA score can help programs identify and invest dollars into those players that have a high trajectory, right? And so when you think about the IGA score, it sits on a 100-point scale, just so you know. And the closer you are to 100, the greater your runway is and the better athlete you are. And so if you have a player that has an IGA score of a 94 versus a player that has an IGA score of a 64, you're probably going to invest more NIL dollars in the player that has a 94.
Yeah.
And so programs that we're working with, they'll continue to lean into that IGA score to help them allocate the right NIL dollars to the right players, especially on the front end. And then as the athlete progresses throughout their career at the university, adjustments potentially could be made based on their production and their growth.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that's really a big win for you, and you could, use it, like you said, in marketing and then like for marketing, like for companies, what are the main, things they are looking for? Like, let's say for coaches, you mentioned some like oil hips or something, like for marketing companies. What do they look for?
They're looking for eyeballs. They want to be associated with an athlete that's an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
An indicator of an influencer is the athlete's social media following.
Mm-hmm.
So a brand can simply look at how many followers an athlete has, and the greater the
Mm-hmm.
number, the more greater the valuation in terms
Mm-hmm.
of for the athlete. And brands want to be able to be associated with an athlete that's got a large following because that following can generate eyeballs in terms of getting consumer eyeballs onto the brands
Mm-hmm.
that are associated with the athlete. Now, they're also looking at the fit. And what I mean by that is it's not just about followers for brands. They also want to make sure that they're associating with an athlete
Mm-hmm.
that's to not generate negative publicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not have any off the field issues going on. So character is also important for brands when they're looking at who they want to sign to an
Mm-hmm.
NIL deal. And that's really the first variable that brands are looking at is, hey, is this athlete of good character? Are they a good fit for our brand? Will they represent our brand? Because they're brand ambassadors. Will they represent our brand in a positive way? And then once they check that box, then okay, now let's talk about how many eyeballs and how large the following is for that particular athlete. So those are the two most important things that the brands are looking at: fit, followers.
Awesome, Cory. I'd love to speak more, but we need to wrap it up. At the end, I have a couple blitz questions for you. And first one, what is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is American football, followed closely by basketball. My first love was actually basketball,
Okay.
but I quickly found out I was a little bit too short and too slow to play that sport at a collegiate level. So I transitioned and played football. Fell in love with that. I started playing that sport at the age of 7 and played
Okay.
all the way through my college career. So American football is my favorite sport, followed closely by basketball.
Who is your favorite player then?
Well, on the football side, one of my favorite players today is actually Patrick Peterson. He plays defensive back, cornerback
Mm-hmm.
specifically, which is a position I played and position my son plays. So he's one of my favorite players today. He plays for the Denver Broncos, for those of
Mm-hmm.
you who follow the NFL. Considered one of the best players. And the reason why I like Patrick Peterson is because he combines elite athleticism with elite skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime you can pair those two, you're going to be successful. And so I love players who not only have the athletic ability to play at the professional level, but they really truly understand that in order to maximize their God-given abilities, that they've got to also master their skill. They've got to
Mm-hmm.
master the nuances and the details of playing their position, and then they also understand that having that football IQ is what we call
Mm-hmm.
it, and studying film, studying their opponent, studying the tendencies of the team that they're going to play. All of that rolls up into making a player truly, truly great, and Patrick Peterson is one of them.
Yeah, I agree on that. You need to put the work in your talent, right? In the talent you
Absolutely.
have. All right. What is the favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job is
Yeah.
just working and solving problems, right? And so I love when a program, for example, comes to us and they have a particular positional need, and they come to us and they say, look, we're looking for a player that isn't necessarily highly recruited because they're looking for hidden talent.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're able to provide them with hidden talent based on our IGA score, and that player goes on to have success in their
Mm-hmm.
program, we're super excited to help programs like Texas Christian University or TCU. We're able to help them do that. We help them identify a 2-year starter that was in the transfer portal
Mm-hmm.
from the Naval Academy, who went on to become not only a 2-year starter, but an all-conference player, and helped TCU reach the national championship a few years ago.
Okay.
With our data, they made TCU made this linebacker his only offer based on our data, and the
Okay.
rest is
Yeah.
kind of history.
Well,
So that
well,
that when we see success stories like that, boy, I got to tell you, that just thrills me, and it warms my heart when we're able to unlock opportunities for the athlete, and then it works out for the program.
What a case study. What a case study. What is the worst part of your job? What sucks, to be honest?
Not being able to help every single athlete that we come across, right? And so, look, to play collegiate sports, it takes a certain level of athletic ability, and not all athletes have the athletic ability to play at that level. Let's just be clear and candid about it. However, our mission is to make sure that the right players are playing at the highest level, and today that's not happening. 67% of high school student athletes are overlooked. 67%. And I'm one of them, and my son was one of them. And it's not because they don't have the ability, it's because, right, it's because athletes aren't having certain exposure, right? Maybe they didn't go to a certain camp. Maybe they live in a certain area that most college programs aren't recruiting. And so we're leveling the playing field because at the end of the day, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. What you put on tape, we're going to be able to measure, and we want that to be the athletic currency to make sure athletes are getting a fair shot at playing at the next level. And that's truly our mission. But what I don't like about our job is knowing that there are going to be some athletes that we grade out objectively that just quite frankly don't have the athletic traits to play at the next level.
Okay, Cory, thank you so much. Tell us where we can follow your work. Where are you active?
Absolutely. Yeah, so if you're active on X, I am. You can follow myself. I'm Cory, C-R-Y, Cory, C-O-R-Y-R-A. That's my handle. Again, at Cory, R-A. And then the company's handle is at RA Analytics. You can also follow us on Instagram at Reel Analytics. And we'd love for you to give us a follow. If you enjoyed or have any follow-up questions, please feel free to give us a follow. Ping me on DM. I'm pretty active there and pretty active in answering questions via DM.
Thank you, Cory. It was nice to have you. Really interesting talk.
Absolutely. Thanks, Khalil, for having me on.
Thank you.